Well, if you've written a book, this next guy is someone that you are definitely going to want to know. Brian Feinblum is, well, he's a leading book marketer for over 30 years. He's written over 4,000 blog posts in this decade. And as a matter of fact, Book Baby has named him one of the best book marketing blogs. See, I told you, you want to know this guy if you're an author. He's worked with some really big names like Seth Godin, Dr. Ruth, Stephen Covey, just to name a few. We could spend the whole interview talking about how many people he's actually worked with. But we're going to bring Brian in right now. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Brian, let's talk about kind of your career for starters. I mean, over 30 years, you are someone who's really well connected.
I never thought I would be in the book marketing world. I originally went to college to be a journalist, and then I went over to the dark side of PR after I couldn't get a job initially as a journalist. Being a student in New York City was tough to break into. So I
Sure.
started working for a small book publishing company, learned a lot just by trial and error, as most authors learn trial and error. And over
Yeah.
the years, I've developed a lot of techniques and successful ways to promote authors. So I love working with authors. I love books. I love promoting literacy, ideas, stories. That's what books are all about.
Absolutely. And it's an award-winning blog. It's not like you're just pumping information out there. This is a blog that people are paying attention to and they want to be a part of. Can you
Mhm.
share about what kind of successes you've had and what kind of exposure an author would have with your blog?
Sure. So Book Marketing Buzz Blog started a little over 10 years ago. And thankfully it's gained a wide readership. There've been over 3 million page views since the blog
Wow.
began. As you've mentioned, Book Baby and also FeedSpot have ranked the blog very high. I love writing about books and book marketing. Authors have an insatiable appetite to learn what can they do to promote and sell their books, and that's
Mhm.
primarily what I write about on the blog. And I do so in a voice that they could understand and appreciate. Maybe it's my Brooklyn upbringing, but I tell it the way I see it, and I encourage people and I call them out if they're not doing what they should be doing. We all
Mm.
need guidance and help, and I think the
Sure.
blog the blog has done that. It's been coming out pretty much daily for the past 10 years, which is a big obligation. I didn't think I'd be working on the blog that steadily, but
Mm.
I've become addicted to it.
In working with authors, it seems like the most difficult part of writing the book is once it's written and marketing it. They say writing it is the easy part. Oftentimes, when I'm talking to authors, my first question is, how many books have you sold? And Brian, so many, I would say in the 90 percentile is less than
Hmm.
100.
Hmm.
What is it that publishers do? And how can people like you help them?
Sure, that's a good question. You're right. Writers love to write. Most do not like to market, or if they
Yeah.
want to market, they're not sure what to do or have the time to do it. And yet, it's a crucial piece. There are over 5,000 books published every single day in the United States.
Every day?
Every day, every single day. Could
Oh
be
my
a holiday, could
gosh.
be a snow day, could be the weekend, could be July 4th. There are 5,000 new books being churned out, which is a tremendous amount, in
Right.
addition to all the other content that is put out there in all forms. So there's a lot of competition. So authors must promote. Things will not just happen accidentally or by discovery. You have to initiate that discovery process. And whether you're published by a traditional publisher, if you're lucky to be with one, most authors are independently published.
Right.
They still have to work at it. The author is definitely the owner of their publicity. And you're right, when they write the book, that's the easy part. And then they give birth to it. Now we have to raise that book or that child to go to college, and that's
Mhm.
marketing.
Mhm. And there's a real skill to that, and it's especially difficult because it's changed. It feels like it's changing every week. Can you kinda give a little bit of a landscape of what it looked like when you were first in the business to where we are now?
Yes, I mean, so different. I started out back in 1989, and the fax machine was the the key way of reaching the media, and phone calls and in-person visits. Now everything comes through our phones, right? It's all emails, it's
Yeah.
all texts. Sometimes we track down the media on social media. You can tweet at them, you can post to them. So things have definitely changed. The core principles of marketing are still the same. You have to have a good book, a great message. It has to be timely. You've got to link it to what's going on out there and come up with a creative way to get someone's attention. So whether you're sending an email or you're posting on a blog or you're trying to launch a podcast or you guest post on someone's Facebook page, whatever it may be, it's still about communication, get that story angle right, and make people want to be interested in you. But to sum up, the landscape today, I think it's divided amongst a number of areas. Certainly social media, which is a broad area, traditional media, some targeted advertising, mostly online, speaking engagements, bulk sales, giving books away for free as a strategy, pursuing book awards. So there are probably about 10 different buckets, and each one has their own steps and process as to what needs to be done. But authors can do this, even if they can only do a third of it, half of it, a tenth of it. Everything they do can go a long way to establishing their brand and getting some exposure for their books and get beyond, as you said, that 100 book sale breaking point.
You just said something really important, and you talked about the brand. And
Mm,
people, a lot of times, if they're an author, they're talking about their book. Let's talk
yes.
about those two things because they are very different.
Correct. I mean, there's certainly linked your book and your brand depending on what you write about and what you talk about, but you have to create an image. Certainly, if it's a nonfiction book, that depends on your professional and personal experiences that basically qualify you to write this book.
Hmm.
And you've got to tell your story, and your brand is your image. Your brand means you have to be everywhere, even small things. Do you have an email signature mentioning the book? Do you have a website? Is it very good? Are you active on social media? Like, how often do you post? What do you post about? Do you get them back to your website? You've got to be able to tell kind of your origination story. You may not see yourself as a brand like Coca-Cola, IBM, Google, or Microsoft, but you are a brand. You know,
Yeah.
everything you do, everything you say contributes to how people perceive who you are, the words that you use, the image that you put out there. And over time, if you keep at this, you will develop a following, whether it's on social media or your own email list or some other means. And if you're going to publish more than one book, your brand is very important for sure.
It seems kind of crazy because there could be an independent author who has a very small phone, a microphone, or very small voice, doesn't know how to market, but has an incredible message, perhaps like a world-changing type of message, but it's never going to get out because they don't know how to market. What would you say are the first 2 or 3 buckets that they should be paying attention to if they can't do all 10?
Sure, and you're right. I mean, you could have a book that says how to cure cancer. We can only hope for such a thing. But let's
Right.
say you have a book that cures cancer. If people don't know about it, if you don't purposely try and get the word out there, that cure goes away. No one's ever going to know about it. So what
Yeah.
can you do? It depends on your timeline. So if you're before the book is coming out, that'd be step one. Is there are certain things that need to be done before a book comes out. Let's say 6 months before your book is out, you definitely have to have your website up, have pre-orders going maybe 3 months before the book is out. You should send advance review copies, if you can, to major media about 4 months before the book is out.
Mm.
Social media is an everyday active battle, both to post something out there and to purposely try and get people to connect and follow with you. You've got to be proactive. So everything, speaking engagements, could be bookstores, libraries, nonprofits, organizations, schools. It depends on what your topic is, but that takes months and months of preparation. Sometimes it's at least 3 to 6 months lead time to schedule an event. Bookstores might be 2 to 3 months in advance, but other
Okay.
things take more time. So my advice would be is to have a timeline that leads up to the book's publication, beyond the book's publication, and continues. It's a continuous thing. It used to be that people would promote around the book's publication date and then they stop and they
Right.
wait for the next book and do it again. This is really a lifetime approach to constantly have your voice being heard, writing articles for different websites and newspapers, being interviewed on other people's platforms, you coming up with your own original content, your blog, your podcast, your video channel. You don't have to do it all, but you have to pick and choose at least some of these things to get started. And the things that you turn out to be really good at or like doing, those are the ones obviously you should keep going on with, and don't worry about what you're not doing.
I'm exhausted. That's a full-time job.
There is a lot. Look, there is a lot of effort out there. The good news is that eventually your book is what's going to take off. The word of mouth. If your book is really good and you're seeding hundreds of people or 1,000 people to learn about your book, eventually the book will take over one way or another. Either it's not so
Mm.
great and it just dies on the vine, or it's decent to great and people start talking about it on their own, posting reviews, posting on their social media,
Mm.
inviting the author to speak somewhere. So things eventually will shift towards the book itself, but initially it's all marketing. It's all let's get attention for something and hope that the book is good enough to support or honor that attention that you're trying to get.
So how much can you do for an author?
A lot. I work two different ways. One is that I can do some of the heavy lifting. I can certainly write your press kit materials, create a website, reach out to targeted news media, whether it's radio and podcast, book
That's a big
reviewers.
deal. That's a huge deal.
Yeah,
Those
that's a huge
connections. Yeah.
lift.
Yeah.
And then the other part would be instructional consultations, strategic consultations on very specific areas. Authors may want to know how to do something. Even if they're somewhat proficient on something like Facebook, maybe they haven't thought of it quite the same way in terms of
Mhm.
marketing their book in the way that it needs to be done. Maybe their website needs improvement. Maybe they need media coaching. Maybe they want to learn some of the tricks of the trade of what can you do to get sales, things that are not obvious, but if you know which resources or
Mm.
websites or organizations to approach, you'll have a lot of success. So I can help
Yeah.
them either whispering in their ear and encouraging them and giving them resources or doing the heavy lifting.
Brian, share an offer that you have on your heart that you want to give to the authors today.
I've got two offers. Thank you.
Okay.
One is certainly I would love to interview all the authors that are listening to this. I have a desire to really support books and the authors that are out there. So whether you hire me or not, I'm happy to offer an interview with you for my blog. You just have to go to bookmarketingbuzzblog.blogspot.com. My email is on there at the end of every blog. You can reach out to me, or it's my name, Brian Feinblum at gmail.com. And the other offer is to give a 30-minute free consultation with authors to go over what have they been doing to market themselves, what could be done, and to identify if we're a fit, if I can help them and encourage them to be marketed or market themselves.
That's awesome. Okay, one more time, how people can get a hold of you.
Sure. So they can email me, and my name is Brian, F as in Frank, EINBLUM at gmail.com, or go to my blog, bookmarketingbuzzblog.blogspot.com. Boy, that's a long name.
That's all right. We've said it enough. I think everybody's going to get it. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. We'll be in touch soon
Thank
and have you
you.
back on the show soon, too.
Much appreciated.